Today, NASA says the pulsing sound was feedback from an audio configuration between the International Space Station.
Now, this noise is a kind of pinging sound. Let's have a listen. This is one of the astronauts, Butch Wilmore.
All right, Butch, that one came through. It was kind of like a pulsing noise, almost like a sonar ping.
A horrible sound was coming from the spacecraft's speakers. A shocking discovery.
One more time, and I'll scratch your head to see if you figure out what's going on. Here we go.
Butch, a renowned astronaut, quickly sent this strange noise back to his team on Earth to check it out. At first, nobody heard a thing, but when they listened again, there it was. A weird, rhythmic pulsing like an intimate, distant call for help. What if these sounds are a warning of danger lurking in the shadows of space? Let us understand the horrifying transition humanity is going through and what it could mean for the future generation. Exposing the sounds of space. At first, ground control didn't hear anything, but Butch tried again, and this time they could hear a rhythmic, pulsing noise. Some people compared it to a beacon or signal. Despite trying to figure it out, the mystery remained, leaving everyone puzzled about what could be causing these sounds. As the signal grew louder, it suddenly mirrored a human heartbeat, except no one was there, or was there. For questions like these, Andrew Liu is often the expert people turn to for understanding strange space events. Andrew noted that this isn't the first time such sounds have been reported in space. Similar noises were reported during the Apollo missions, especially when they were orbiting the moon. At that time, astronauts reported a humming sound that they had to investigate. But this wasn't the most surprising part. This recent noise seems to be coming from the spacecraft's speakers, which might suggest it has something to do with the electronics on board. It could be related to some kind of electrical connection inside the spacecraft, which is still attached to the International Space Station. Figuring out the exact cause of these noises is very important, because any unexplained event in space could affect both the safety of the astronauts and the condition of the spacecraft. The equipment has some extra devices and connections, and it's been in orbit much longer than originally planned. This could mean there are small shifts happening, which might be causing parts to become slightly loose, or create vibrations that we can hear through our audio systems. It would be really interesting to look at the sound wave patterns to get a clearer idea of what's going on. This situation is similar to what happened during the Apollo mission when the lunar module was attached to the command module, and the connection created some noise in the communication systems. The specific noise we're hearing has a deeper tone, and it might be caused by a microphone placed too close to a speaker. It's definitely something we need to look into to figure out exactly what's causing it. Overall, the spacecraft has been working well, but something new seems to have triggered this noise. Even though this issue isn't expected to be a major problem, we can't ignore it without a proper check. Based on past experiences, it could be related to a connection problem between the main spacecraft and the space station. This could be made worse by the extra time the spacecraft has spent in space, which might be affecting the connections or some electronic parts. When Andrew was asked if there was a chance this noise was from extraterrestrial life, he quickly dismissed the idea. Instead, he suggested we focus on checking the spacecraft's hardware and electronics. If there were any attempts at communication from outer space, we would see a wider range of signals, not just the ones we hear through the speakers. It's an interesting idea, but there's no sign that anything or anyone from outside is trying to contact or get into the spacecraft. We thought it was just noise, but there's more to the story. A new era in spacecraft challenges. When trying to figure out what was happening, we found out it was just some equipment making noise. The sound was strange, but also a bit interesting. Even Commander Chris Hadfield, a well-known former astronaut, was worried. While he was on the space station, he heard the noise and wanted to make sure it wasn't a sign of something serious. But don't worry, it wasn't anything like aliens this time. We can say that for sure. But what's next for the Starliner spacecraft, Andrew? Its journey hasn't exactly been smooth, has it? This mission was just a test run, which is why experienced test pilots like Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams are on board. They're up there to check how well the spacecraft systems work while it's in orbit. Unfortunately, the Starliner had a few problems, including a helium leak and some issues with its thrusters. The thruster problem is the bigger concern. When it's time for the spacecraft to leave the space station and head back to Earth, the thrusters are really important. If they don't work right, the angle of re-entry could be off, which would be very dangerous for the astronauts. So, this time, the astronauts won't be riding back on the Starliner. Boeing needs to make a lot of improvements to make sure the spacecraft is safe for people. But here's the kicker. They're up against some tough competition from SpaceX and its Dragon spacecraft, which has already been very successful. In fact, it'll be a Dragon spacecraft that brings the astronauts back to Earth this coming February. In the midst of discussing SpaceX, the focus naturally shifted towards Elon Musk, a man often characterized by his far-reaching vision for space travel. Many question the feasibility of his ambitious goals, but his determination is unwavering. From a young age, Musk was captivated by the concept of space exploration, a dream that mirrored the childhood wonder of many others, including the person speaking. The evolution of spacecraft has been both rapid and remarkable, continually inspiring the imaginations of many. The speaker envisioned a future, perhaps a century away, where this era of pioneering space travel is looked back upon as a pivotal chapter in human history, with interstellar travel as routine as air travel is today. The conversation took a playful turn with the suggestion that if this discussion were to continue 100 years hence, it could either be due to extraordinary advances in health science or perhaps a magical ingredient in one's tea. Dreaming about the future was not only a source of joy, but also a manifestation of hope for what lies ahead. The speaker appreciated the shared dialogue, likening their companion to a guide to the stars, enriching the conversation with insightful ideas. From strange noises to deeper doubts, the plot thickens. Underwater or outer space, the baffling case of the grounded astronaut. Contrary to expectations, the focus was a NASA astronaut who was not adrift in the vast expanse of space, but was speculated to be right here on Earth, perhaps submerged underwater. This peculiar notion was fueled by a recently leaked audio clip that captured an unsettling event. The clip revealed the commander of the International Space Station apparently experiencing a severe medical issue. The symptoms suggested in the audio were reminiscent of decompression sickness, commonly known as the bends, a condition often associated with deep-sea divers when they ascend too quickly. Now, the bends is a condition that mostly affects deep-sea divers when there's a sudden drop in pressure around them, whether it's air or water. It can also happen to people at high altitudes or in planes without proper pressure. But here's the part that makes you think twice. You might be saying, but he's an astronaut, up in space where pressure changes all the time. Isn't that enough to explain his symptoms? That would make sense, at least until you hear the end of the audio clip. They talk about moving the commander to a hospital in Spain. But wait, how could that happen if he's supposedly floating miles above the Earth in zero gravity? This detail turns everything upside down and makes you wonder where these astronauts really are. Are they up there among the stars, or are they much closer to home than we think? As the doctors try to get to him, they find themselves stuck. They can't arrive any sooner because there aren't enough surgeons available, and the current traffic isn't helping either. Even though they can't be there in person right away, they stay in contact over the phone, reassuring that for now, this is the best they can do. One of the doctors explains that he is about an hour away from the medical center. He wishes he could get there faster, but the situation makes it impossible. While he waits, he starts looking for other options, like finding another doctor who might be able to reach the scene more quickly. The news about the commander's health isn't good. The doctor keeps things simple to avoid any confusion. He remembers a conversation with a contact named Dan, who helped him find a hospital in Spain with advanced treatment options. This hospital has the facilities needed for critical care and special treatments. The doctor quickly offers the details, ready to act as fast as possible. He mentions that the hospital is San Carlos, located in San Fernando, in the province of Cadiz, Spain. To make sure there is no confusion, he repeats the hospital's name and phone number, stressing how crucial this information is for arranging any potential treatment. The message started with a code and then a series of numbers, 34, followed by 956, 819, and then 043, which was described as a country code. The numbers were repeated, 34, 956, then 819, 043. While all of this was going on, the speaker mentioned they would keep going with their journey unless a flight doctor could step in sooner. They also said they were ready to take any calls with updates or changes. This was strange, since they were supposedly on the International Space Station. If they weren't experiencing decompression sickness in space, the next guess would be that they were underwater. Confusion grows as we separate fact from fiction, solving the Starliner's mystery sounds. The situation with the NASA audio caused a lot of confusion at first. It all started when audio from a live stream of the International Space Station seemed to show a real emergency. The recording mentioned a commander needing urgent medical help because of serious decompression sickness. This condition can happen when astronauts move too quickly from a high-pressure environment to the vacuum of space. If not handled properly, gases like nitrogen can form dangerous bubbles in their bodies. But NASA soon cleared things up. They explained that it wasn't a real emergency. It was just a routine training simulation. This practice drill was meant to help both the astronauts and the ground teams prepare for various types of emergencies that could happen in space. Unfortunately, the audio went live by mistake during a time when the crew was actually supposed to be resting. This mistake led to a lot of worry and misunderstanding among people who were watching. NASA made it clear that all the crew members were safe and that no one was in any real danger. They emphasized that these simulations are very important for making sure everyone, both in space and on the ground, knows what to do if something goes wrong during a mission. Even though there was some confusion, training exercises like this are vital to keeping space missions safe and well prepared. But that wasn't the most alarming part. What really surprised people was how easily the mistaken audio spread, leading to widespread concern in just a matter of minutes. NASA had to act fast to correct the misunderstanding, highlighting the importance of clear communication during such critical times. That's right, strange noises from a capsule that wasn't even occupied. Here's what happened. The astronauts got curious and reached out to Starliner Houston to ask if they were imagining things. One of the astronauts, Butch, asked if they could somehow connect to the Starliner's audio to see if the sound was really there. Butch was confused by the strange noise coming through his speaker. He didn't know what was causing it and wondered if it might just be a bad connection. Houston agreed to help and said they'd set up a connection so Butch could share the audio with them. When they got the connection set up, Butch held his microphone close to the speaker and asked Houston, "Can you hear anything?" But here's where it gets strange. Houston said they heard nothing at all. Butch wasn't ready to give up. He tried again, and this time, there it was, a faint, pulsing sound, just barely making its way through. Imagine hearing a noise, kind of like the ping you might hear from a submarine or some underwater equipment. You hear it again, and you're left scratching your head, wondering what's going on. So let's play it once more. Interestingly, some people are also saying it sounds like someone is tapping on the Starliner. And isn't it funny how, just today, while we were talking about the idea of NASA astronauts training underwater, NASA released this audio that seems to hint at exactly that? The mystery deepens with every unusual sound. The mysterious echoes of the Starliner spacecraft. It seems the Starliner spacecraft is making some strange noises that sound a lot like sonar pings. An article from Fox News recently pointed out that these noises, coming from the spacecraft's speaker, remind people of the sounds submarines make with their sonar, or like someone is tapping on the outside of the spacecraft. However, these sounds are only heard through the speaker system. Recordings of these noises have been shared on social media sites like X, formerly Twitter, along with a message to Houston that included the original audio. The hope is that someone out there might recognize the sound and help figure out what it is. But here's the twist. Even if it turns out that these noises really do sound like sonar from underwater, it wouldn't be entirely surprising to those who work on NASA's space missions. Why? Because strange noises in space aren't all that unusual. But this isn't the most puzzling part. One of the astronauts said the noise sounded like a sonar ping, the kind you might hear underwater. This unexpected sound worried both the crew on the ISS and the team at Mission Control on Earth. Esther Bauer from Fox 35 shared that engineers quickly found out where the noise was coming from. They assured everyone that the astronauts and the Starliner spacecraft were not in any danger. After looking into it, NASA explained that the odd sounds were just some audio feedback happening inside the ISS. It was a surprising discovery, and a little bit unsettling too. But this wasn't the most surprising part. The engineers and astronauts now had to figure out why this audio feedback was happening and if it could lead to any other problems in the future. And so, the investigation continues, making sure everything remains safe for the crew and the spacecraft. Over the weekend, a strange noise started coming through the communication systems of the Starliner spacecraft. NASA astronaut Butch quickly reported the unusual sound to Mission Control back on Earth. The team on the ground immediately began investigating these odd noises. The sound was described as a steady rhythm, similar to a sonar ping, almost like the beat of a mechanical drum. By Monday morning, NASA had figured out the source of the noise. They announced in a tweet that it was due to a misconfigured audio setting. The audio systems on the space station are quite complex, and sometimes they can cause unexpected disturbances or feedback. Astronauts are trained to report any sounds that don't seem right, so that potential problems can be found and fixed as soon as possible. This situation reminded many of similar issues with the Starliner in the past. Space analysts were relieved to hear it was just a simple error and not a new problem with the spacecraft. Imagine hearing an odd noise while working on the station, not knowing where it's coming from. It could be quite unnerving for the crew. But thankfully, this time, it was only a minor software mistake. As the Starliner's crewed flight test neared its end, NASA prepared for the spacecraft's undocking, which was set for Friday. The return trip to Earth would be made without any astronauts on board due to safety concerns with the thruster and helium systems. These problems were considered too risky for a manned flight. But this wasn't the end of NASA's recent challenges. In related news, Mission Control sent documents to the FAA detailing a new launch date for the Polaris Dawn mission. The first attempt last week had been postponed because of bad weather, but an official announcement about the new launch date was expected soon. Yet, even with these updates, more questions remained about what was next for the Starliner and the Polaris Dawn mission. What does the future hold for the Starliner and Polaris Dawn? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.